My name is Mike Edgington. I'm the Operations Manager of Railblazer. I started working with Ross at Railblazer in 2010. I actually rang him to get a reference for a job I was going for, and he phoned me and said, "Oh, really, you're looking for something new at the moment, are you? Maybe I've got something for you." And I started here when the company was very small, just working 4 days a week, and it grew pretty quickly. My background, I've been in manufacturing since I was about 19 or 20. Spent a lot of years in metals manufacturing, especially sheet metal, and with a fairly high degree of automation. So this light assembly environment for me is something quite different. I tend to come at manufacturing from the perspective of manufacturing is making things, you're joining things, you're cutting things, you're transforming something into something else, and whether that's metal or plastics, or I've made ropes, it all tends to be similar from a process perspective. So my approach is very process driven, and I like to ensure that the processes are working towards becoming more efficient every day. When I joined in 2010, there were Ross and I in the office, and Ross's wife Julie and another lady we had working here, Cheryl. They would work 1 or 2 days a week, probably in assembly, and Ross and I were hard at work doing sales and marketing and trying to build the distribution network. You'd often find Ross and I actually down on the assembly line putting some bits and pieces together at times. If we had a big order, there'd be 4 of us down assembling and no one sitting in the office. Since then, last year in July, we moved into this factory that we're in now, from a fairly dark and dingy building around the other side of Silverdale. It was really nice to have a big open space, just a big rectangle to start with, to set this up to be a really efficient manufacturing facility. And I would estimate we gained between 5 and 7% efficiency just by the layout in this building from what we were doing previously. To improve productivity, and the measurements that we use to improve productivity they need to be based in something that's tangible that people understand, and you should only really ever measure things that you want to change. In too many places you'll see people filling in a whole screeds of paperwork and measuring a whole lot of different stuff, and that information goes into a management report, and management look at it every month and nothing happens. So we try to focus here on measuring what's important and on measuring what's actually meaningful to the people who are reading the measurements. So down in our assembly area, at the end of every job, we look at how many minutes it should have taken us to assemble a certain item and how many minutes it actually took us to assemble that item. So they get that instant feedback loop, and we understand the success not only for each job, but often during each job we'll go and have a quick look at how we're going and see if there are any problems. We measure warranty returns, and we're just getting into measuring our 5S performance from a lean perspective. We're developing an audit tool for that at the moment, so that we can look at how successful our systems are with regards to orderliness, tidiness, standardization. People call it lean manufacturing a lot. Lean is applied to most of New Zealand's hospitals use it now. Banks, a lot of banks use it, insurance companies. It's not automation versus efficiency improvement. What it's about is about reducing waste. So if you look back to Toyota, one of the sort of founding fathers of lean in Toyota was Taiichi Ohno, and one of his pet hates was automating waste. So if you have a process that is at point A and then the next process is at point B, and those 2 points are a long way apart, there's a waste of movement there, having to transport those goods. Putting a conveyor in to do that, in that you reduce your reliance on labour, you're just automating that waste. Why not put the processes next to each other? So automation gives you repeatability and the ability to get the same result every time, and that's fantastic if you have the numbers. There are parts of our processes now we're looking to automate, but in New Zealand, especially in New Zealand manufacturing, if you're not exporting, we typically don't have the numbers. Packing fruit and vegetables, certainly the numbers are there, but in a lot of what we do in this country, it doesn't make sense to automate. It makes sense to just become more efficient doing it the way you do it. To ensure continuous process improvement, we like to take a training approach, and we also, it's about bringing the people along and ensuring the people are developing. I think without exception, the team we've got working here in the assembly area, none of them come from an assembly background. They're all reasonably smart people who have a few clues, and with the right guidance and understanding, then they can be encouraged to work in a manner that does bring continuous improvement. We have a daily meeting at 2:25 with the whole team, and we discuss health and safety as always the first agenda item, then we look at any quality issues, and then we look at any process issues that we've had during the day. At the same time, we're working really hard to standardise our processes and develop documentation that ensures we do it the same way every time. Once we've got those standards in place, it's then easy to make improvements. It's very, very hard to improve a process if you don't actually fully understand that process, or if you're not even following the same process each time. Our sales planning is it's a part of the business that we drive fairly hard from here. Our customers are getting better at planning what they're ordering from us because the product line is maturing and they know what sells through more now. But we drive our key distributors. There are 4 distributors who are our largest customers, and we drive them fairly hard to give us good information. So we get monthly sales figures from them, and we also get a monthly report on what stock they've got, and we're quite involved with pushing them to place orders. The hesitance has been, especially in the US market, for our distributor to place large orders. And an example, in January or February, I asked them for a forecast on one particular product line, which is a kayak cart we make. I'd forecast a 50% increase in sales on that line. They came back with about a 15% increase, and they said we can't justify any more than that. I knew on the basis of previous sales figures in their market and other markets that they were going to go a lot bigger. So we ordered materials. Some of our materials are on a 3 to 4 month lead time for the larger forecast, and it seems they're exceeding that now. So we are very pushy as a supplier to our largest distributors for getting orders early. And the market intelligence we also build in with our sales guy in Europe and our sales guy in the US. But really it's about ensuring we've got the flexibility, I think, to respond fast, which on most of our products we do because there are short lead times on materials, but some of them we do have longer lead times, so we have to forecast and hold stock. The material I mentioned that's on a 3 to 4 month lead time, we work with our supplier, and they actually bring in pallets and pallets of this plastic resin, and we hold it on consignment. So we don't own the stock until we consume the stock, and we have, from memory in the contract, it's if there's anything we haven't consumed at the end of a 6 month period, we have to buy it from them, but we usually use it in 3 to 4. I think consignment stock is very important for any business if you can get that relationship with a supplier. It's been very handy for us as a growing business because it allows us to smooth out those spikes a little bit, but it's something we'll keep doing no matter what size we are. It gives an example of a consignment stock relationship we have is with our fastener supplier. We've got about 2 to 3 months stock on a rack in the warehouse there, which belongs to them, and at the end of the month they come and count what we've consumed and they send us an invoice. Prior to that, we were probably placing an order once a day with them. There's 20 plus purchase orders a month, 20 plus packing slips a month, 20 plus invoices a month. All of that processing has a cost associated with it, plus the picking and the shipping of the orders, the freight costs. So instead we get once a month, they drive up here with a big van and they top the shelves up and we get one invoice. So it works really well for them. They need less staff and it works really well for us. The way that consignment stock works with that supplier from a forecasting perspective is we give them a forecast. I have given them a forecast which I probably go 30 to 40% higher, and they know that we're going to use it eventually. We're talking nuts that are 1 cent each. So if we're 100,000 short on a quarter, it's not a big deal. Manufacturing in New Zealand is something I've held very dear for a lot of years, and I've always worked for export companies, or almost always worked for export companies. Manufacturing in New Zealand gives you a lot greater control over your quality. It allows us to do much shorter runs and be more responsive to our customers' needs. So there's one item I purchased from China because it's not available here, but the quantities we have to purchase, if we had a model change, I'm buying 3 years of stock in order to buy that from there. If we had a model change, I'd have a lot of obsolete stock. If we were getting our goods made in China, let's say we had our plastic mouldings done in China, the quantities we would have to order would mean we'd need a warehouse that's much, much bigger. We'd need a lot more capital tied up in the business. If there was a quality problem, it would be a big deal because we probably wouldn't be able to supply to our customers. And you're reliant on shipping lines and all sorts of things. It makes it really, really difficult. We've had some problems recently with getting product to our distributor in the US because of some industrial action at Sydney ports. They keep cutting ports out here in New Zealand. If you're reliant on a supply chain that involves long lead times, significant stock purchases, and infrequent shipments, if one of those infrequent shipments goes awry, then you're going to be out of stock. Or you hold a lot more stock to cover that, and then it's just a much greater capital investment. We reinvest our capital in new products and new tooling and research and development. We don't have it sitting on the shelves in stock. Finding the right people for the role here in New Zealand can be a challenge at times. It depends entirely on which part of the labour cycle we're in. When Louise was employed was 7 years ago, and I placed an ad in one of the local papers, and I only gave a personal email address so that no one knew where the company was, so we weren't inundated. I advertised on Seek a month ago. I got 50-something responses to the advertisement, and one of them was suitable. And I gave a spiel about the company, I gave a company email address, etc. So the challenges here specifically come when unemployment is low. And at that point, it's hard finding the right people. They're out there. There are a lot of good people there for the type of work we do for light assembly. Most people can do that. And one of the things we've done here quite successfully, we have a team who work from 8:30 to 2:30. So we've tapped into a labour market where there are a lot of mums with kids at school who are looking for those part-time hours, and we've been very successful getting some really good people who are keen to work, who are keen to use their heads, and we get a good result from that. The value of tapping into that flexible labour force is that you're actually getting a very good quality of person. For this type of light assembly work, and it's reasonably repetitive work, I've done similar work in South Auckland where you're tapping into a completely different labour force, and especially if you're getting a lot of young school leavers who are not that keen to work, but they're doing it because they need to put food on the table, you're not going to get engagement from those people, and they don't really want to think, they're too busy thinking about the weekend. Where we've got people who have had previous careers where they've been quite successful and they're quite motivated, this is a stopgap for them, and they may well go back to their career later on, but at the moment we're getting a very good quality of person. As far as the lean or continuous improvement goes here at Railblazer, that's one of the reasons Ross brought me on board specifically, and it's something we have focused on from the very beginning. Lean, it's becoming a term that less people like to use. A lot of people seem to associate lean now with cost cutting and things like that, which it's not. So we sort of tend to call it continuous improvement, although I'll still fall back on the lean term when I'm not thinking about it. It's a strategy that will gain a lot of success and keep you ahead of the competition if you can do it very well. But it's about really empowering the people who do the job to make the improvements and to feel that they can suggest an improvement to a process, have that listened to, have it looked at, evaluated, and then incorporated into the process if it is the best way. I think with lean, there's not necessarily a connection with the level of education of the workforce, but there is definitely an engagement aspect to it. I was over in Melbourne last year visiting Toyota and Denso, who supply auto parts to the Toyota plant. As you may be aware, they shut down in October 2017. Now, I was really surprised at the massive level of engagement that both Toyota and Denso still had. This was February 17, and their staff were really excited to be working there. And speaking to their supervisors and their team leaders and their managers, they were all loving their job. Even though they knew they only had till October to go, they were really engaged. And that's because these guys have been doing lean for so long that that's just how they do their job. The Toyota guys had set themselves a goal that the last Camry that came off that line in October would be the best Camry ever made in the world, and every decision they made and everything they were doing was working towards that one singular goal. The Denso plant, the team there, even though they knew their jobs were ending in October, they were still highly focused on what improvement they could make tomorrow and what they could do better next week, just to make their job easier. And something I try to get through to people is that what continuous improvement is about making next week easier than this week was, removing the frustrations and the things that are obstacles to you doing your job properly and efficiently. As far as lead times go and the control of our supply chain, we have short lead times on most of the components that we use. So we basically use plastic moldings, printed cards, we use some blister packs, and we use fasteners. That's the majority of what we use. We do use some aluminium extrusion. Almost everything that we purchase for this building, for assembly here, is on a lead time of 4 weeks or less. There are a couple of exceptions that are, the lead time might be 2 to 3 months, and we have to hold higher stocks of those. We also have formed very solid relationships with our suppliers, so we know that if there is a spike on a particular product and suddenly we are looking like we're going to be out of stock, we can ask those suppliers to supply in a short lead time, and without exception they can do that. They understand, they've watched the growth of the business and they've seen what we're doing, so they understand that by them supplying something to us on a short lead time, which may make life a little difficult for them in the short term, the growth will be good for them and for us. So we try to form a very solid bond with all those suppliers. I think what makes Railblazer successful is the product line that we have, the development that we're doing. We've always got a lot of products under development, so there's always a reason for our sales team and our distributors and everybody involved to go and talk to customers. And also our customer service, we really strive to give the best possible customer service and just be better than our opposition. And we know for an absolute fact we are much better than our opposition at customer service. In order to be better at customer service, we ensure that we tell people what we're going to do, we answer their questions in a timely manner, and then we do what we told them we were going to do. We can frequently have individual consumers of our product really surprised when they'll send an email through the contact form on our website, and they might be from the States or the UK, and we'll email them and say, oh look, I'm sorry to hear about your issue, have you got a phone number I can ring you on? And then at 7 o'clock at night when they've woken up in the UK, we'll give them a call and we'll resolve that for them. None of our opposition companies would be doing that. Now, it's not often we have to do that. We've got quality pretty tied down, and sometimes it's a problem that the customers had with an installation, or they're trying to use something in a way it shouldn't be used, but we will always make that effort so that the customers know they're going to be looked after. And you go and search the forums for Railblazer customer service, you'll find some stories of that. You know, we're well known for it. I think the big focus for us that's really allowed us to maintain our efficiencies, which allows us to maintain our cost in the marketplace, is by ensuring that we have a really good culture in the workplace. We have not increased our prices in the market to any of our customers since we opened the doors. There are 2 product lines out of 40, I think, that have had a slight price increase. And we've done this partially through economies of scale, through growing and we order larger quantities, and partially through ensuring that we're continuously driving down our assembly labour times and maintaining what we're doing. One example would be our rod holder. It used to take us about 3 minutes to assemble a rod holder, and now it takes about 1.4 minutes. It's the same product, but we've just improved our processes. We've introduced new jigs, we've rearranged the way the bench is set up, and we're not sweating blood. We tell people all the time, we don't want you working harder, we just want you working smarter. The way we ensure the culture of continuous improvement stays alive is by focusing highly on that, and moving into this new building's been a help. Before we moved into the new building here, four members of the team here went and had a look at Fisher & Paykel Healthcare out in East Tamaki, and we had a good look through their factory, and I took them out there to give them the vision of how I wanted this place to look, because most of these people aren't from a manufacturing background, and even if they were, a lot of people where they have worked has not been how we would like this place to look. We then focus very highly on job times and efficiency and what improvements we can make, and we talk about it a lot. We do not as much training as I would like, but any given opportunity, when I've got the whole team here of a day and we're not super busy, we will sit down and we'll talk about something to do with continuous improvement. 5 years from now, I guess we will probably be turning over 2 or 3 times what we're turning over now, so that will mean 2 to 3 times the output. Most people would be looking for a building that's 2 to 3 times the size, but I don't think that's necessary at all. I think we just need to increase our flow through this building of components by 2 to 3 times. So currently we do run a shorter day, we run a 5.5 hour day. That may have to increase, but it's also about trying to reduce labour times. We're competing with China, really. We're making small plastic things, and that's what China do really well, and the low-cost manufacturing countries. So one thing we endeavour to do when we design a new product is to design as little labour or design as much labour out of it as we can, and that way China's advantage is reduced. So really our focus will be on reducing the amount of labour we put into our products by changing the way we assemble or package them, and by changing our processes and the way we process the goods. And we may need to look at working longer hours here, having a team that works 8 hours a day or maybe 2 shifts.